Hey guys, tonight we're unraveling a story with more twists than a pretzel factory. Imagine you wake up, stroll into your love nest, and find a letter hidden beneath the couch cushions. A treasure waiting to rewrite your entire romance, like a plot twist in a soap opera. But before you dive headfirst into this emotional roller coaster, hit that like button if you've ever found something you weren't meant to see, and drop a comment with your wildest love letter stories below. Now dim those lights and grab a cozy blanket. Trust me, you're going to need it, because this isn't just any letter. It's a Pandora's box of secrets, longing, and maybe a dash of drama that'll make your heart race and your palms sweat. In the sleepy town of Eldridge, where the air smelled faintly of jasmine and old books, Alois rummaged through her late grandmother's attic, an uncharted territory filled with dust motes swirling in shafts of light. With each creak of the wooden floorboards beneath her, she felt as if she were stepping back in time, unearthing forgotten treasures that begged to be remembered. There, buried beneath moth-eaten quilts and warped trunks, she stumbled upon a delicate envelope, yellowed with age and sealed with a kiss that was barely visible. Her heart raced as she recognized the familiar handwriting, the swirl of her grandmother's cursive that once graced birthday cards and baking recipes. Little did she know that innocent slip of paper was to become her time machine, transporting her to a world of passion and poignant regret, one that would flip her own love life upside down like a pancake at Sunday brunch. Who wouldn't haunt an attic for a love letter with the potential to put rom-coms to shame? As Alois gently opened the letter, an intoxicating scent wafted up from the pages, a heady mix of sandalwood and nostalgia, old enough to untangle emotions she never knew were knotted within her. The words danced before her eyes like characters in a Victorian romance, spilling secrets of a forgotten love affair that made her heart flutter and sink at the same time. Like a detective on the hunt for clues, she was drawn into the tale of two lovers, faced with choices that ultimately led to heartbreak. Alois couldn't help but chuckle at the irony. They had the sort of love story that legends are made of, while she was stuck in a relationship with Mark that felt more like a sitcom in reruns than a thrilling adventure. She half expected a laugh track to chime in, as she realized how far removed her own complacent romance was from the tempestuous emotions penned by her grandmother so many years ago. With each passing paragraph, Alois felt the weight of her own indecisiveness pressing down harder than a ton of bricks. Her boyfriend, Mark, with his love for video games and aversion to emotional conversations, somehow seemed less dashing now, like a tired sidekick eager for the mundane rather than the extraordinary. The giddiness of her grandmother's youthful yearnings clashed with her own stale reality, forcing her to confront an uncomfortable truth. Was she truly living, or simply existing? It was like tasting stale popcorn at the movies while reading a riveting thriller. The contrast was unbearable. As her mind swirled with thoughts of missed connections and stagnant love, she couldn't shake off the feeling that she herself was caught in a game of hide and seek, desperately hoping for a revelation from the shadows of the past. Aloyse's heart raced as she closed her eyes, imagining the fervent whispers of her grandmother's heart, the stolen glances, the secret meetings, and yes, the bitter regrets that echoed through generations like a well-worn record skipping on the arm of a dusty jukebox. Each line in the letter sculpted a vividly intimate portrait of passion marred by societal expectations, a narrative that made her fingers tingle with longing. There was something almost poetic in the way her grandmother had loved. It resonated through the fibers of the musty attic like an anthem of romantic defiance. Determined to be swayed by history's lessons, Aloys couldn't help but think she'd let Mark, with his unwavering practicality, become a part of her neatly folded corner of life, a corner that now felt far too small for the dreams she hadn't dared to pursue. With a newfound zeal swirling through her veins, she leaned forward in her grandmother's chair, determined to pry open the window to her own heart and let in a breeze of change. As the rain began to patter softly against the roof, echoing like a gentle drum roll, Aloys knew she was on the precipice of transformation. Somewhere amidst the romantic defiance of her grandmother's hidden letter, she began to accept the strength she had within to forge a new path. With determination setting fire to her wistful thoughts, she envisioned the possibilities of love beyond mere stability. Who knew what awaited her if she dared to sidestep the safety lines and embrace the meanderings of genuine connection? With the letter in one hand and her heart full of questions, Aloys felt that she was just a step away from becoming the hero of her own epic tale, ready to pen a love story of her own that could rival her grandmother's. After all, if life were a movie, she was ready to rewrite the script and break out of the sidekick role once and for all. In the quiet shadows of Aloys's bustling life, a crumpled letter lay like an unopened treasure, the weight of the words pulling her into a vortex of nostalgia. The scent of ink and yellowed paper wafted around her like a ghost of the past, urging her to explore its secrets. As she reread those eloquent sentences, every curl of the script echoed not just her grandmother's longing, but a melody resonating with her own heart. It was as if the universe had flipped a coin and landed on the side of fate, intertwining her love life with a forgotten romance from decades ago. just when she thought she'd buried her doubts about Mark under layers of wry humor and well-timed distractions. The letter unearthed a tidal wave of feelings that even the mightiest beach umbrella couldn't shield her from. Eloise, in her whirlwind of emotions, confided in her confidant, Rena, who was sipping her usual caramel macchiato while dressed like a walking Pinterest board. With a flick of her perfectly manicured fingers, she pushed Eloise's latte aside, declaring that it was high time they dissected this love saga. The air fizzed with excitement as they shuffled through old family journals, pages crackling like autumn leaves underfoot, unveiling a romantic tapestry rich with dreams and heartbreaks. Each entry painted a portrait of Eloise's grandmother, entangled in a passionate affair that felt almost too familiar, like a rerun of an irresistible rom-com. With each revelation, they took a mental snapshot, laughing off the drama while knowing deep down that it was a mirror reflecting Eloise's own tangled web with Mark. As the days turned into a fragile chain of new revelations, Eloise found her world shifting. She often caught herself staring out the window, her gaze lost in the bustling streets below, her mind a million miles away, fighting an internal battle. The scent of freshly brewed coffee became as potent and bittersweet as the feelings flooding her heart. Every time she met Mark, discussions turned into tightrope walks, laughter colliding with hushed silences, and soon each interaction felt laborious, like rolling a boulder uphill. Her excitement shifted to an ominous tension that simmered between them, each spark igniting more misunderstandings, leaving them to check their emotions like they were characters on a reality TV show battling for emotional supremacy. Every confrontation felt like it belonged in an episode of the real world, complete with dramatic build-ups. One evening, while eating pizza that had seen better days, the air thickened with an unsaid verdict. Eloise finally broke, hurling half a pepperoni slice down in a moment of passion and frustration. You know, sometimes I feel like we're living someone else's love story, as if I'm just a pawn in a game I didn't sign up for, she exclaimed, the cheesiest part of the pizza gluing itself to her gaze of wild determination. Mark, with his eyebrows raised like they were on a roller coaster hurtling straight into a loop, could only stare, caught off guard, his pondering expression ready to deflect her angst with his trademark dry humor. But as the remnants of their quarrels lingered in the air like the scent of burnt toast, Eloise eventually learned that love, much like fine wine, needed fermenting, and a bit of spunk. In the midst of peeling back layers of her grandmother's secret life and pouring her heart out, she discovered that her struggles weren't solo acts, but rather chapters in the same epic saga of love. With Rena's unwavering support, and an ironic playlist blaring in her mind, she resolved to confront her feelings head-on. Yes, the journey was about making sense of her heart's whispers while dodging the chaos of everyday life and pizza grease. In that delicate dance, Alois realized an open heart is often the best compass when navigating the nuanced terrain of relationships. Alois stood in the attic, the air thick with dust motes that danced in the dim light, like forgotten secrets waiting to be awakened. The hidden letter had sent her heart racing, fueled not just by the ink's romantic yearnings, but by the shifting echoes of her own life. In her hands, an envelope crinkled, as if bearing the weight of time itself, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was unearthing a buried treasure. The letter spoke of a love lost, a romance that whispered sweet nothings in a world where every love story is either a fairy tale or a total disaster. And just when she thought she was just playing detective, she found a clue that led her straight to Oliver, also known as the ghost of love past, rolling in like some heartthrob from a long-lost movie script, complete with tousled hair and a charming smile that made her knees weak. Was this her reality, or just some overcooked romance play on a rainy day? Either way, her heart was up for consideration. Meeting Oliver was an electric moment, bursting with the kind of tension usually reserved for superhero movies. There he sat, casually flipping a lock of hair away from his forehead, as if it were straight out of a classic rom-com. His laughter was infectious, a melody that echoed in her ears long after he'd walked away, leaving her in a cloud of intriguing scent, woody and slightly spicy, like he had popped straight out of an adventure novel. Alois felt a connection forming, each word they shared weaving a new bond, as if they were two wayward souls plucked from different timelines, finding a chance to rewrite their narratives. This was not just banter, it was a twist of fate, a fiery spark igniting a flame that had smoldered for generations beneath layers of despair. She had unearthed history, but could this love, once hidden, coexist with the present she shared with Mark? Spoiler alert, it wouldn't be easy. As the days drifted by, Alois found herself trapped in a dance between the past and the present, a jigsaw puzzle that threatened her very sanity. Each time she met Oliver, sweet, sweet irony dripped like honey on a warm biscuit. Her heart was racing for another man's past, while Mark waited in the shadows, blissfully unaware that he was about to become the unsuspecting third wheel in a historical love triangle. Sitting across from Mark at their usual cafe, the air smelled of burnt coffee and baked goods. But all she could focus on was the urge to wrap her fingers around Oliver's hands instead. With every laugh Mark shared, a shadow loomed over her heart, and a question tromped around like a marching band in her mind. Was her chance at true love worth risking the bond she had with Mark? Maybe she should begin taking notes, like a high schooler studying for finals, because it felt like she was navigating a romantic minefield with Oliver on one side and Mark on another, both of them unwitting participants in her chaotic love drama. Alois lay awake some nights, listening to the rumble of thunder outside, like the simple yet captivating soundtrack to her internal struggle. The walls of her bedroom felt as if they were closing in, filled with echoes of a distant melody she couldn't quite place. Was it a ballad for love or a requiem for her future? Those nighttime ruminations about her tangled heart only deepened with each encounter with Oliver, who was beginning to feel less like a ghost and more like an awakening. The thought of his laughter, mingled with the sight of his old letters, warmed and terrified her, leaving her questioning if she truly had a choice. The stakes were high, and should she choose this path, there was no going back, a fact that weighed heavily on her heart, like her favorite pair of jeans after a holiday feast. It was almost ridiculous how one letter could send her spiraling through time like a character in Back to the Future. But here she was, stuck in the paradox between two loves. One evening, as she walked along the cobbled streets lit by the soft glow of street lamps, Alois felt the wind nudge her into a decision, as if the universe itself was a great cosmic referee beckoning her to pick a side. Each step echoed off the brick walls, harmonizing with her racing thoughts, the silent battle inside her more epic than any movie climax she had ever seen. Mark's comfortable presence began to feel like a cozy sweater, soft but snugly uncomfortable, while Oliver's aura sparked wild possibilities, like a gust of wind that could send her flying if she let it. With a twist of fate and a battering heart, she knew that soon she'd have to stand tall and yell, "Showtime," in her own melodrama. Instead, the city buzzed with life, offering her a brief moment of respite and clarity amidst this tumultuous storm of emotions. Whatever choice lay ahead, one thing was crystal clear. She was done with secrets. It was time to own her truth, to cut through the noise like a ninja chef, slicing through an onion, spectacular, sharp, and potentially tearful. The air crackled with tension in Alois's cramped apartment, as she clutched the folded letter like a fragile bird. The delicate paper crinkled in her hand, a relic from a time gone by, whispering secrets that had lain dormant for far too long. "Mark, I found something." Her voice trembled, a precarious tightrope between dread and resolution. Mark's eyes darkened, his brows knitting together like a discontented storm cloud. The very walls seemed to lean in to eavesdrop on their confrontation, the thin paint peeling under the weight of uncomfortable truths. It was one of those moments when reality shifts, like a plot twist in a rom-com that suddenly turns tragic, the kind where the audience collectively gasps and reaches for the popcorn, but realizes it's already cold and stale. With a swift motion, Alois opened the letter. The scent of old ink and faded love letters swirling through the air like something out of a Gothic romance. Her heart raced as she read aloud, the words rolling off her tongue like a forgotten melody, revealing snippets of her grandmother's passionate youth and hidden heartaches. Mark's reaction was instantaneous, the sardonic smile faltering, replaced by indignation and hurt that was palpable, as if someone had doused him in ice water. "You're comparing our love story to some ancient relic," he scoffed, anger simmering just beneath the surface, collecting like dark clouds before a thunderstorm. Irony dripped from his words. After all, it was his own secrets that had laid the groundwork for her discovery. But the irony was lost on him. Much like a band playing off-key in a coffee house that was way too hip to notice, Alois's heart thrummed with a madly chaotic rhythm, caught between the thrill of the unknown and the gnawing roots of nostalgia. In that confrontation, clarity pierced through the fog. She could no longer ignore how her grandmother's past had nagged at her like a persistent mosquito at a summer picnic. "This isn't just about the letter, Mark," she confessed, feeling the gravity of the moment like a character at the climax of a Shakespearean thriller. Holding onto the past, clinging to its shadows, felt heavier than an invisible backpack filled with regrets. The dusty memories had grown into a veritable fog, obscuring the sun of her present, and she realized it was suffocating her chance at happiness. But here stood Mark, all hot under the collar, a living, breathing testament to her habit of dredging up the ancient while neglecting the now. The silence that followed was thick and charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. Mark's expression shifted, a cascade of confusion morphing into questioning. This was a betrayal he hadn't foreseen in their scripted duet. "Are you sure about this? You're willing to toss everything aside for—" "What? A letter?" he questioned, incredulous. Alois nearly chuckled at the sheer absurdity of it all. Here they were, two adults fighting over paper when outside life was blooming like a million daisies in spring. But despite her urge to break into nervous laughter, fear gnawed at her insides like a feral cat scratching to escape a locked room. A pivotal crossroads loomed ahead, embracing the familiarity she'd built with Mark, or taking a daring leap into the unknown with Oliver, whose presence ignited her heart like the flick of a match to kindling. In the crescendo of emotions, Alois's mind fluttered back to dizzying visions of Oliver, his cloud of laughter, the way he moved with an ease that made gravity itself seem negotiable, choosing between safety and adventure, felt like channeling that age-old riddle. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Would stepping away from Mark mean walking into the warmth of a new romance, or simply spiral into an abyss of loneliness? The allure of the what-ifs danced teasingly in the corners of her mind as the confrontation escalated into a standoff, a gauntlet thrown. Alois faced the man she'd loved, and suddenly the letter morphed from a piece of old drama into the catalyst for her growth. One deep breath, a thread of courage braided through her, and she knew unequivocally it was time to write her own story, one letter at a time. Alois stood on the threshold of her apartment, the late afternoon sun spilling through the window like liquid gold, illuminating the dust motes swirling in the air. She had always imagined this moment painted with butterflies and rainbow confetti, the dramatic flair reserved for rom-coms. But instead, reality wrapped around her like a heavy fog, with her heart pounding like a malfunctioning drum. She knew it was time to shatter the glassy facade of her relationship with Mark. The air was thick with the scent of brewed coffee, a memory of their countless lazy Sunday mornings together, a bittersweet reminder that was about to morph into an old flickering film. Real, they used to pop popcorn too. It's now or never, she muttered, clutching her grandmother's heirloom ring. Its cool comfort, a reminder of the courageous women who had come before her. Breaking barriers like it was a sport, while wearing pearls for flair. The words tumbled from her lips in a cascade of emotion as she faced Mark, who stood bewildered, the creases of confusion deepening on his forehead. I need to find out who I am without you, she declared, feeling like a superhero shedding her cape for the real adventure, self-discovery. Just as she felt the first rush of exhilaration, Mark's expression morphed from shock to a hilariously ironic smirk. Like he'd just realized he was the punchline in an unexpected joke. The air crackled with tension, and Alois almost expected a sitcom audience to gasp or laugh awkwardly from an unseen corner. So there she was, a leading lady confronting the quirky plot twists of her own love story, chalking up the first of many brave choices she would make that evening. As she stepped into the swirling winds of change, Alois's thoughts turned to Oliver, the ever-charming whirlwind who had a penchant for spontaneous salsa dancing in the office break room. His laughter echoed in her mind, a playful melody that softened the edges of her heartache, almost like the soundtrack to a rom-com waiting to be filmed. Thoughts of him wrapped their arms around her like a warm hug on a cold, rainy day, stirring something deep within her, a fierce longing for romance that felt as thrilling as stealing the last piece of cake at a birthday party. With a grin, she imagined their first coffee date, where she wouldn't have to answer to anyone but herself. contemplating the universe over cups, overflowing with rich, aromatic goodness. Out there beneath the stars and city lights, she would explore what it meant to love unabashedly, no scripts, no rehearsals, and definitely no boundaries. Alois felt driven, invigorated, a lioness roaming through the savannah of her emotions, ready to embrace life anew. As she traced her grandmother's delicate handwriting in the hidden letter that had detonated this entire journey, a thrill ignited within her, a mix of excitement and sorrow smothered in a desire for freedom. Each word breathed the ancient wisdom of love and loss, serving as both a compass and a mirror, reflecting the path she was carving for herself. Here she was, a modern-day heroine stepping into a world that hadn't been encased in the dusty pages of her past, but one that sparkled with the promise of fresh beginnings. The place smelled of fresh ink and hope, each letter laden with the courage to rewrite her narrative, heart pounding in an exuberant symphony of possibilities. Pen in hand, Alois sank onto the old, creaky wooden chair that groaned in protest. But she didn't care. This was a catharsis. As the ink flowed, she crafted her own letter, not a goodbye, but an invitation to herself. A telling of stories yet lived, woven with laughter and joy. Perhaps a little mischief, too. She envisioned the whimsical plot twists, the ups and downs of romance akin to a season finale cliffhanger that left audiences gasping for more. With every stroke, she trapped her fears and dreams onto the page like fireflies in a jar, illuminating everything she wanted to explore and achieve. And while the scent of fresh paper dulled the perfume of past heartaches swirling in her mind, Alois couldn't help but chuckle at the irony. She wasn't just stepping away from Mark, she was stepping toward a future that shimmered with endless possibilities, fueled by her fierce desire to embrace love, discovery, and unbounded courage. Picture this: a small, sleepy village sandwiched between towering mountains, where even the squirrels gossip in whispers. In the shadows of time-worn eaves, a young historian named Eric stumbled upon his grandmother's attic, a treasure trove of dust bunnies and nostalgia. As he rummaged through the cobwebs and forgotten mementos, a glimmer caught his eye: an ancient diary, its cracked leather spine resembling the wrinkled face of history itself. The book, adorned with intricate runes that looked like bold calligraphy from a wizard's shopping list, whispered of secrets just waiting to be unearthed, like an old man's odd collection of porcelain cats. It was in that moment, amidst the musty scent of aged paper and unresolved family drama, that Eric felt a tingle of destiny prickling at his spine, as if the universe had silently proclaimed, "You shall be the chosen one of your family's messy past." As Eric flipped open the diary, he was greeted by the faintest whiff of mildew, reminiscent of the aftermath of a soggy sandwich left at the back of a fridge for too long. The pages crinkled softly, protesting against the intrusion of the modern world into their dusty haven. They revealed the elaborate musings of a long-gone ancestor, whose whimsical scribbles seemed to dance across the paper, recounting tales of forgotten legacies and family dramas that made daytime soap operas look like child's play. With each turn of the page, Eric's heart raced, envisioning himself as Indiana Jones, except instead of a fedora and whip, he was armed with nothing but an old wooden chair and a penchant for caffeine-fueled late-night reading. What could be so interesting about Grandma's great-great-great-grandfather? He mused, all too aware that family trees can often resemble tangled vines of chaos. Days turned into nights as Eric became consumed by the diary's cryptic ramblings. He half expected the diary to start talking back with a cheesy one-liner. The author, a figure cloaked in mystery, spoke of clandestine meetings by moonlight, long-lost treasures buried beneath the roots of the village's oldest oak tree, and warnings of a curse that seemed more like an episode plot from Supernatural than a familial heritage. Which film should I audition for today? Eric often chuckled to himself, balancing the absurdity of what he read against the real-life insignificance of marching to the village bakery for his daily bread. Yet the deeper he delved, the more he uncovered. Stories of triumph, heartbreak, betrayal, and, quite frankly, some astonishingly bad hair choices from the medieval era. Who knew patchy beards and overly elaborate headpieces were a thing. But Eric recognized the weight of these narratives. They transformed from irrelevant family gossip into the bones of his identity. Emboldened by this newfound connection to his ancestry, Eric decided it was time to embrace his inner sleuth and uncover these long-buried truths. Armed with nothing but the diary and a smartphone that showed him more memes than facts about genealogical research, he set off to the village library. The walls were painted with the scent of aged wood and faded dreams of aspiring writers. There, in the golden light filtering through dusty windows, he traversed the labyrinth of bookshelves like a time traveler, determined to find the historical humans behind the veils of his ancestors. He even half-heartedly hoped a librarian might appear, shushing him like one of those quirky sidekicks in an adventure movie. But alas, only the sound of crickets and the occasional sneeze filled the air. With each dusty tome he flipped, he felt like he was building a bridge to a past that had always felt miles away. As the pieces of Eric's ancestry puzzle began to fit together, he found himself infused with a pride as vibrant as a peacock at a rock concert. The diary had transformed from a relic of dust into a catalyst for discovery, revitalizing the stories that breathed life into names scattered across his family tree. Secrets poured out, offering glimmers of resilience, strength, and humor from generations long gone, like discovering your great uncle was not only a blacksmith, but also an amateur magician who often misfired on big family gatherings. With each revelation, Eric felt a sense of belonging in this eclectic lineage, a sense of humor dancing like shadows across the moonlit roof of his grandmother's cottage. In the end, he realized that this ancient diary was not just about revealing hidden truths. It was about weaving together the threads that connected him not only to the past, but also to his own future adventures, where the fact that he often ran late was decidedly less embarrassing now. His ancestors had clearly paved the way for eccentricity. Eric sat cross-legged on the dusty floor of his grandmother's attic, the faint smell of mothballs mingling with something musty and ancient. Before him lay the diary, its leather cover cracked and peeling, as if it had been exiled from history itself. As he opened it, the pages whispered like ghosts, shaking off their slumber, revealing the delicate loops of script that danced across the parchment. His fingers trembled with a strange mix of excitement and dread, reminiscent of that feeling when you open a video game and realize you've bitten off more than you can chew. Could this old tome really hold the secrets of his bloodline? Or would it simply unlock a Pandora's box of family drama fit for a reality TV show gone rogue? The ink revealed tales of Alara, a shaman with a presence so powerful that even the trees seemed to bow to her will. Her rituals were filled with the sweet scent of burning sage and the crackling sounds of fire, each incantation echoing through the canopies like an ancient melody that the winds knew by heart. Yet amidst the reverence lay a bitter betrayal, a twist that could make even Shakespeare weep. Eric wrestled with the weight of this revelation. How could such trust decay into betrayal, like a perfect loaf of bread left out to mold? He could almost hear the disapproving clucks of the village elders resonating in his mind. A chorus of skepticism, louder than an 80s rock anthem blasting from a boombox. Determined, Eric vowed to uncover the truth that had driven his ancestors into the shadows. But as he ventured into the village, he was met with cold glances slicker than a politician's smile, skepticism oozing from their very pores. The elders had heard whispers of Alara, but their versions were tinted with fear, a flavor more bitter than burnt toast. Each step Eric took echoed with the heavy thud of history, weighing down on him like a backpack jam-packed with old textbooks, irreverent and full of potential wisdom. Despite their resistance, there was an undeniable spark in his spirit, fueled by the hope that maybe, just maybe, he could stitch together the frayed edges of his lineage. But history has a way of throwing up its hands and saying, "Not so fast." Just when Eric thought he had a handle on the situation, strange occurrences began to swirl around him, like ghostly apparitions in a horror flick. Shadows flickered at the corners of his vision. Rustling leaves seemed to whisper secrets. And on particularly eerie nights, the air would crackle with energy, buzz like a swarm of angry bees. His heart raced, half in fear and half in a bizarre sense of adventure, like he was the star of his own supernatural thriller. And with every strange occurrence, he could feel Alara's presence nudging him closer to the edge of a dark legacy that demanded to be unearthed. Yet through the entanglements of doubt and the unsettling whispers from the past, Eric found an unexpected ally in the most unlikeliest of places. A stray cat with fur as dark as a moonless night. This feline companion had a knack for showing up at the most opportune moments, sassy and full of attitude, like a wisecracking sidekick in a buddy cop movie. As he delved deeper into Alara's tragic story, the cat seemed to guide him, with a nonchalant flick of its tail suggesting, "You really think you're in over your head, please." With each old secret he unearthed, Eric forged a connection not just to Alara, but to a heritage that was dying to be remembered. And in the heart of that dusty attic, beneath layers of time, he realized that perhaps the past wasn't merely a series of regrets. It was a treasure chest waiting for the brave to unlock its mysteries. Eric stood at the threshold of an old, crumbling structure, the ancient diary clasped tightly in his hands. It felt oddly warm, as if infused with the pulse of his ancestors, calling him to action. The air buzzed with anticipation, and a whiff of damp earth reached his nose, mingling with the ghosts of history whispering through the cracks in the walls. Each word he had read danced in his mind, urging him onward, but trepidation clawed at his gut like a ravenous beast. What if the only thing waiting within these forgotten ruins is a family curse, or worse, a family reunion? He muttered under his breath, half amused and half terrified of what lay ahead. His journey wasn't solitary for long. Soon, he stumbled upon Ella and Toby, spirited descendants of Alara, with their own grim tales to tell. Ella, her fiery red hair bouncing like a rebellious flame, related how her great-grandmother spoke of a haunting at the family estate, while Toby, rolling his eyes as if he'd just heard an overplayed movie plot, insisted the hauntings were more inconvenient than terrifying, like laundry day on a rainy Tuesday. Together, they formed a ragtag band of cursed kin, driven not just by the intoxicating allure of unveiling their heritage, but by the gut-wrenching truth that their ancestors were frustrated specters, striving to keep them from the hidden secrets. They laughed and groaned, bantering through their fears, and soon discovered the rhythmic thumping of their hearts was oddly synced, a family heritage they were eager to embrace, even amidst the ghostly chaos. With determination ablaze, the trio forged ahead, each ancient site more challenging than the last. The looming shadows of towering trees seemed to reach for them, their twisted branches clawing at the very fabric of the darkening sky. As night closed in like a shroud, they trekked across treacherous landscapes, slipping through treacherous mud and prickly bramble that grasped for their skin like a persistent X trying to slip back into their lives. And oh, the sounds, the eerie whispers of the wind howled through the trees, mingling with the distant cries of unseen beasts that echoed their own fears. It was a tangible reminder that they weren't just racing against time, they were also in a dance with energies older than the moon, which seemed oddly entertaining for a family seeking closure. It was during one particularly harrowing night, as a storm brewed overhead with the fury of 1,000 bad hair days, that the spirits of their ancestors revealed themselves. Eric caught a glimpse of shadowy figures swirling around, their translucent faces contorted with ageless concern. One spectral figure, holding what appeared to be a broomstick, not a witch, I swear. He felt the need to clarify, sought to protect their secrets from being uncovered, to thwart them as if they were set to leak family gossip on a live television show. With each encounter, the air became thick with the bittersweet scent of nostalgia, mingling with regret and an unquenchable thirst for redemption. A bizarre cocktail that sent shivers down their spines, but also sparked an unexpected camaraderie among the living and the dead. As dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight pierced through the chaos like a superhero saving the day, washing away the cloaked fears of the night. With the truth of their lineage now painfully clear, Eric and his companions stood at a precipice, the weight of their shared ancestry both an unbearable burden and a unifying bond. They realized their ancestral spirits weren't just hindrances, but tragic figures whose own stories needed to be told. Armed not just with newfound bravery, but with respect for the tangled legacy they carried, they resolved to confront the curse defiantly. United in their quest for truth, they knew they would rewrite their narrative, and perhaps, just perhaps, turn the family reunion into a celebratory feast instead of a haunting ground. The air crackled with tension as Eric stood at the edge of the writhing abyss, where shadows twisted like tortured souls. His breath came in jagged bursts, each exhale misting before him like spectral whispers. Beside him, his allies gripped their weapons, eyes wide and hearts pounding like drums at a Viking raid. They were on the brink of a confrontation that felt like an age-old epic, one that echoed legends only recounted around campfires. A heavy, acrid scent of burnt sage hung about them, a bitter reminder of the dark spirit festering in the ether, a remnant of his ancestors' betrayal rearing its grotesque head once more. This wasn't just a battle, it was a reckoning, and the stakes were higher than the price of admission to a front-row seat at a rock concert gone wrong. As the dark spirit emerged, a swirling mass of darkness, dotted with glimmering eyes like malevolent stars, Eric felt the weight of the ancient diary clutched in his hands. It was like holding a piece of history that buzzed with the energy of spells long forgotten, alive with stories of Alara, his brave ancestor. He flipped through the yellowed pages, each turn releasing a musty smell that hung in the air like the remnants of a ghost's sigh. His fingers tingled, sparking with the magic that flowed through his veins, urging him to unleash forces both beautiful and terrifying. And he thought, wouldn't it be just like Hollywood to throw a magical family showdown at the end? The spirit's laugh boomed like thunder across the expanse, a sound that could curdle milk and shatter glass, filled with centuries of rage and sarcasm that would make even the snarkiest villain proud. With a deep breath, Eric called upon the power of Alara, his voice rising above the cacophony. Ancient words spilled from his lips, weaving spells that vibrant colors danced around him, the shades of forgotten battles and lost loves flourishing with life. Each incantation was both a balm and a blade, infused with both fury and grace, as he summoned shields of luminous light and blades that shimmered with silver fire. His mind raced, calculating every scenario, every move, as memories of family dinners and laughter echoed in his ears, joy and heartbreak entwined like old vines around a crumbling wall. He could almost hear his grandmother's voice, warning him about the consequences of choosing revenge over reconciliation. The irony not lost on him in this moment, even a simple family feud could lead to the most epic of disasters. The clash was intense, a symphony of screams and roars, illuminated by bursts of primal magic. It was like watching a chaotic outtake from a reality show where the stakes were life or death, and the spirit's taunts rang sharp in the air. Eric dodged a wave of dark energy that smelled of charred regrets, recoiling from its touch. Each hit against his shields felt like a punchline in a cosmic joke, reminding him that doom and gloom weren't merely plot devices of cheesy horror flicks. They were knocking at his door. With every spell, he felt the pull of vengeance deep within, a sweet seduction that hummed like a siren's call. tempting him to unleash his wrath upon the entity that had torn his family apart. But as the final echoes of their combat rang out, and the dark spirit faltered, Eric faced his ultimate choice: to be the architect of a new beginning, or the tyrant of an endless cycle. The diary's pages fluttered with a gentle breeze, as if urging him onward with the wisdom of generations before him. He thought about what Alara would do. Would she want blood? Or would she seek healing? In that moment, with energy coursing through him, he chose to extend his hand, whispering hope into the void instead of curses. As the light engulfed the dark spirit, the air shifted. Acrid scents were replaced with fresh soil and blooming flowers. A promise of redemption that lingered in the air like the sweet laughter of children on a summer's day, sealing him and his lineage with a newfound bond, if not quite a family reunion. As the sun cracked the horizon, spilling golden light like a painter's brush over the worn stones of their ancestral home, Eric felt the weight of history lift. The relentless darkness that had shrouded his family's past had finally been dispelled, like a stubborn fog relinquishing its hold to the morning warmth. Laughter echoed through the air, a sweet melody mingling with the rich aroma of spiced meats sizzling over a crackling fire. With each bite, they feasted not just on food, but on stories, tales of struggle and triumph that wove together the fabric of their lineage, now united after so long in shadows. Eric glanced around at his newfound kin, their faces reflecting hope and resilience, each smile a testament to their hard-fought victory over a seemingly endless night. But let's not sugarcoat it. This reunion was as chaotic as a cat in a dog show. Cousins wrestled for the last piece of pie. Laughter erupted when Uncle Lyle accidentally spilled a jug of mead. And there was at least one instance of Aunt Mabel trying to recall an embarrassing childhood story, only to find herself in a fierce debate over the color of a prom dress from the 80s spoiler. It was not glamorous. Yet, amidst the joyous uproar, the ancient diary lay open on a makeshift table, bathed in the warm glow of lantern light, its pages fluttering softly in the evening breeze. The pictures and letters told tales of their ancestors, brave souls who had faced adversity far fiercer than spilled drinks or silly debates. And it rang in Eric's heart like a battle cry. The diary was a treasure, a bridge to the past, and now more than ever it belonged to the family. As the final crumbs of the feast disappeared, Eric stood up, his hand resting gently on the spine of the diary. "Gather round, fam," he called, his voice rising above the din as if he were about to announce the next big Marvel movie. Faces turned expectantly toward him, sparkles of excitement lighting up their eyes, and he felt a swell of pride mixed with nerves. He promised to honor their ancestry, to ensure that the wisdom contained within those yellowed pages would never wither as the years unfolded. With renewed purpose, he vowed to be the guardian of their stories. Because if the past has taught him anything, it's that forgetting where you came from is like leaving the best part of a playlist unplayed. Then came the solemn, yet hopeful part. As the gathering transformed from a raucous feast into a reverent circle, each person taking turns to share a piece of what they learned from the diary. Voices trembled, but grew stronger with each recounting. Tales of courage, deceit, and sacrifice spilling out like magic, raw and unfiltered. Eric could almost see the flickers of the past dancing around them, his grandmother's fierce spirit, his grandfather's unwavering resolve. Even the gallery of ancestors painted above the hearth seemed to lean in, listening intently, as if they, too, wished to share in this revival of their legacy, grinning down like proud guardians. This was no ordinary family reunion. It was a collective awakening, an acknowledgement of a shared path now enriched with history and purpose. As twilight descended, painting the sky with hues of indigo and violet, Eric stepped outside, pulling in a deep breath of the crisp evening air, laced with the scent of pine. The stars blinked awake, timid at first, but soon bursting forth like celebratory fireworks in a night sky. He felt a sense of lightness, no more chains binding them to the past. Instead, an invitation bloomed before him, a renewed dawn filled with potential. With the ancient diary clasped tightly in his hands, he resolved to lead them forward, hearts intertwined, making sure that the lessons of yesteryears would shine bright like constellations, guiding their way into an uncharted but hopeful future. As Clara stepped into the attic, a thick layer of dust erupted from the floorboards, swirling in the shafts of muted light that fought their way through cobweb-covered windows. The air was heavy with the musky scent of forgotten memories, each exhale an echo of laughter, tears, and life once lived. Under a blanket of old quilts and faded newspapers, she navigated through a landscape of relics with the grace of a cat in a room full of laser pointers, curiosity lighting her every step. The attic felt like a treasure trove waiting to be unveiled. And Clara, with her heart pounding like the drums in an epic movie soundtrack, felt a magnetic pull toward the stack of boxes that loomed in the back corner like a fortress guarding its secrets. With a flick of her wrist, Clara cleared a path through the dust and junk, revealing a vibrant world of colors that had long been imprisoned under layers of neglect. Nestled between a rusted waffle iron and a stack of yellowing textbooks was a time-worn portrait, wrapped in a shroud of decades past. The canvas trembled slightly as if nervous to be discovered after so long. Clara brushed her fingers over the frame, feeling the rough texture and the chill of history that coursed through the wood. There was something about the woman depicted in the painting. Her eyes glistened like twin stars in a forgotten galaxy, pulling Clara in with a familiarity that made her heart skip like a broken record. As Clara leaned in closer, she couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it, all a portrait of a woman who looked strikingly like her, yet who was undoubtedly centuries old. It was like a scene ripped straight from a family drama, where the protagonist discovers they're related to royalty, except instead of a tiara, Clara found herself staring at a faded gown adorned with what looked like decades worth of dust. Inspired as if by a whimsical muse, she imagined this long-lost relative rolling her eyes and ranting about the struggles of Wi-Fi in the age of horse-drawn carriages. But reality wafted back in like the stale smell of old newspapers, dragging Clara into a whirlpool of questions. Who was this woman? And how was she tied to the enigma of her family history that had remained cloaked in shadows? Despite the daunting task ahead, Clara felt a thrill ignite within her, a spark reminiscent of all those detective shows where the intrepid hero follows the breadcrumbs of family mysteries. With each peek into the dusty boxes, she unearthed snippets of her grandmother's life, a diary with secrets scribbled within, and photographs that felt alive, smiling up at her from the past. She could hear the laughter, the squabbles over who got the last piece of cake, and the everyday quirks that shaped a family history richer than any fairy tale. It was intoxicating, confirming that somewhere beneath the layers of time, there were real stories waiting for her, stories that could rewrite her own understanding of who she was, and perhaps who she could become. As she tucked the portrait carefully under her arm, Clara's mind danced with possibilities and wild imaginings, her heart drumming a beat that echoed with the thrill of discovery. This was more than just an old painting. It was a portal to her past, a chance to embrace the legacy of women who had come before her. With determination coursing through her veins like caffeine on a Monday morning, she vowed to piece together the puzzle, to unravel the tales woven into the fabric of her family's story. Who knew what she might discover? Perhaps a long-lost sibling, a scandal that would make a reality show blush, or maybe even prove that she was secretly, profoundly, and ludicrously related to someone famous, like a distant cousin of a princess, who could not only rock a tiara, but also make vegan avocado toast with style. As Clara rummaged through the cluttered attic, a dust plume erupted like the aftermath of a sitcom sneeze, momentarily obscuring her view. Amidst the cobwebs and forgotten treasures, she stumbled upon a time-worn portrait, its frame a tangle of chipped gold and faded elegance. The woman in the painting, draped in layers of billowing lace, seemed to beckon Clara, her eyes sparkling with stories waiting to be unfurled. What caught Clara's breath was the strange sensation that this ghostly figure was more than just a distant relative. It was as if she held a secret, a hidden thread woven deep into Clara's own existence. With a mix of excitement and trepidation, Clara felt the pull of her family history stronger than her usual aversion to dust and spiders lurking in the corners of the attic. Fueled by her burgeoning curiosity, Clara dove headfirst into a rabbit hole of family lore, tracing her lineage with all the fervor of a treasure map enthusiast on an epic quest. As she leaped from one crinkled photograph to another, whispering names that felt more like characters in a melodramatic soap opera, she uncovered a hidden trove of scandal that would make even the Kardashians blush. Her grandmother, oh so protective, had seemingly folded their family secrets into a neat little box labeled "Do Not Open." But Clara, ever the rebellious historian, was determined to connect the dots, too curious to let bygones be bygones, without thought for the melodramatic consequences. After all, history is just a dramatic narrative marinating in secrets, right? It wasn't long before her fingers brushed against an old leather journal, worn around its edges, but still imbued with the scents of lavender and thyme. The ink, faded yet tantalizing, revealed snippets of a tale that unfolded like a gritty chapter from a scandalous novel, an estranged ancestor caught in a tempestuous romance that defied societal norms. Clara could almost hear the muffled gasps of the family matriarchs as the words danced across the pages, weaving the tapestry of love lost and shame that would ripple through generations like a runaway tide. Alara, the woman from the portrait, emerged as a derailed heroine in the making, her heart entangled in a forbidden love story that put Romeo and Juliet to shame. Clara could almost picture Alara tossing her hair in defiance, ready to shun the whispers that haunted her family tree like angry ghosts. With every turn of the page, Clara could feel the weight of her ancestors' bravery thumping in time with her own heartbeat. It was a revelation that plunged her into a swirling mix of admiration and heartbreak. After all, who wouldn't cheer for a great-great-grandmother who dared to break the chains of tradition? And there it was, the irony that twisted her gut. The very legacy of love that had led to Alara's disownment had also left Clara with an inexplicable pull toward understanding her roots, a love story that echoed through time's corridors. Clara closed her eyes and imagined the smell of rain-soaked earth mingling with the wild scent of freedom, as she envisioned Alara defying societal norms, stepping into the unknown and laughing in the face of scorn. It was as if history had handed her a pair of vintage sunglasses, allowing her to see through the lens of scandal and into the heart of her family's drama. In that moment of profound connection, Clara felt a curious mixture of pride and rage bubbling within her. It was a lineage so jam-packed with secrecy that it could fuel a reality TV show for decades. She understood now that the past was not merely a dusty collection of old photos and heirlooms, but a living, breathing entity whispering to her from beyond the veil. Just like Alara, Clara was poised on the brink of her own choices, ready to confront the molecules of history that had settled around her. What the portrait revealed was not just a face, but a life filled with complexities that would shape Clara's journey forward. And so, armed with the notion that her bloodline pulsed with untamed love stories, Clara prepared to embrace her history, despite the inevitable dust storms that would come with unveiling the truth. Clara's fingers trembled over the time-worn portrait, the dust dancing like tiny specks of sunlit magic in the air around her. This was no ordinary canvas. It dripped with history. The colors faded, but still vibrant enough to whisper secrets of a family legacy she had never fully understood. Each brush stroke seemed to pulse with an energy that tugged at her heart, a haunting reminder of Alara, a woman who had loomed large in the shadows of Clara's life for far too long. Yet the cozy atmosphere of the attic felt wobbly beneath her, like the shaky legs of a coffee table on an uneven floor, as the enticing allure of discovery clashed with the gut instinct warning her to leave well enough alone. What had she gotten herself into? Maybe she should have just kept binge-watching her favorite true crime series instead. After all, what was so appealing about family drama, except for the popcorn it would bring along? As Clara unraveled the layers of her family's history, it became painfully clear that the ghosts of the past didn't take kindly to nosy descendants. Her mother's sharp gaze felt like ice shards boring into her soul, a clear signal that some things were better left buried under generations of regret and resentment. It was like swimming upstream against a relentless river, the memories of Alara swirling in the current, as Clara felt the weight of familial loyalty constricting around her like a snake coiling tighter on its prey. She found herself chasing after threads of half-truths and silenced whispers, each revelation more unsettling than the last. It was as if Alara had orchestrated a marionette show from beyond the grave, dangling secrets just out of reach, forcing Clara to dance along the edge of her family's darkest betrayals, with her resolve beginning to resemble that of an old rubber band, stretched and ready to snap, yet somehow still intact. Who knew skeletons could be so stubborn? Someone should tell them to take a chill pill and get back in the closet where they belong. Then came the strange occurrences, flickering lights, and chilling drafts that gave her attic room an eerie atmosphere reminiscent of a bad horror flick. Clara could almost hear the creaky floors groaning like an old man trying to stand after a long nap, as if the house itself were pushing back against her investigative spirit. She could swear she caught a whisper of Alara's name when the wind rustled through the cracked window, and when the scent of lavender wafted past her like an unexpected hug from a long-lost friend. Clara knew she couldn't back down now. People paid big bucks for Ghost Tour, and here she was, the unwitting star of her own spook show. The irony not lost on her as she partook in this macabre scavenger hunt for truths best locked in the attic, or perhaps under the bed. It felt like she was harboring a secret superhero ability, or maybe just a penchant for digging up trouble. Who knew uncovering family drama could come with a side of supernatural scare tactics? The storm of emotion within Clara surged as she stumbled upon a hidden estate that was more than just bricks and mortar. It was the last chapter in Alara's unwritten story. The news hit Clara like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just a dodgy real estate deal. It was a treasure map to a legacy bursting with potential, and trapped between the remnants of her ancestors' fraught relationships. She stood at the edge of her family's history, staring into the abyss of discovery, the promise of hidden jewels and vintage finds flashing before her mind's eye like a late-night infomercial. A whirlwind of excitement whirled around inside her, drowning out her family's cautious berating and fears of dragging the family name through the mud. Suddenly, the allure of dusty rooms and frayed curtains became a siren song, beckoning her towards enlightenment and maybe a few conversation starters for her next family gathering. Because who wouldn't want to talk about the secret estate their great-aunt had left behind? Family reunions would never be the same again. And so, with a heart pounding like a bass drum at a rock concert, Clara pushed back against her family's resistance, determined to rewrite the narrative that had shackled them for generations. It was no longer about avoiding discomfort. It was about digging deep into the soil of history, pulling out roots tangled in whispers and foggy memories. Each step she took felt charged with a possibility that resonated through her very being, like the first chord of a familiar anthem resonating at a comeback concert after decades of silence. With Alara's spirit as her unlikely guiding star, Clara embarked on a journey that would undoubtedly shake the dust off her family's past, and perhaps, just perhaps, heal the rifts that had kept them ensnared for too long. Who knew the journey would lead them to a greater understanding of themselves with the occasional misstep involving a ghostly scare or an awkward family meeting. Only time would tell how the ties within the family would ultimately bind or unleash a Pandora's box of chaos. Clara stood in the dimly lit parlor of the old estate, the musty scent of aged wood and mold swirling around her like an unwelcome guest. The heavy drapes hung like ghosts, shrouding secrets within their folds, but all she could focus on was the time-worn portrait that had beckoned her from its dusty corner. There it was, Alara, with a gaze so fierce it could set fire to the very canvas it occupied. As Clara examined the delicate brushstrokes, depicting a woman with a dreamy smile and defiant spirit, her heart raced. This wasn't just any relic. It was the key to untangling the web of family drama that had ensnared her for far too long. And she couldn't help but think, why does family history always look like an episode of Maury? The moment she turned from the portrait, the strained atmosphere of familial tension greeted her like a cold, clammy handshake. Clara's relatives, hunched figures draped in their own shadows, hovered by the fireplace, a flickering flicker of warmth battling the cold, hard truth. Her uncle's brow furrowed like he was trying to solve a particularly tricky Sudoku puzzle, while her grandmother, with her steely stare, exuded an invisible weight that made Clara feel like she was carrying small boulders on her shoulders. The echoes of their whispers mingled with the crackling fire, filling the room with a chorus of judgment and bitterness. Clara's pulse quickened, and she felt the familiar sting of an unwanted inheritance, the legacy of prejudice that had grown like a noxious weed through generations, choking the light out of her family history. Gathering her resolve, Clara squared her shoulders and launched into a passionate defense of Alara's choices. Her forbidden love story sparkled with a beauty that even the most ardent cynic would admire. With the comfort of the portrait's watchful eyes behind her, Clara unwrapped the layers of pain and division that plagued her family. Alara was not just a reckless romantic. She cried, igniting a fire of fervor that danced in her chest like a match to gasoline. She dared to defy the shackles of societal expectations, and it's high time we recognized her bravery rather than shunning her for it. Clara's voice cracked with emotion as she could practically smell the long-past perfumes of hope and defiance that still lingered in the air. Clinging to the walls of the estate, her family clammed up, a silence thick enough to slice with a butter knife suffocated the room. The irony hung heavy. Here they were, at a family gathering, yet all too willing to remain strangers locked in their own outdated beliefs. Clara's cousin attempted an eye roll that would rival a sassy TikTok star, but she was met with a glare that could freeze lava. It was almost comical, watching as they grappled with the untold stories of Alara, struggling with truths that were trickier than their last family board game night. As Clara spoke, each word chipped away at the armor of ignorance, a battle cry for empathy ringing through the verses of the past, a melody so necessary for healing the rift that had festered far too long. Finally, as the fire flickered low and the shadows grew, Clara breathed in the charged air, a mixture of fear, hope, and the unmistakable aroma of something shifting. The portrait seemed to shimmer with anticipation, and for the first time, Clara dared to hope that the tides of change were coming. Her family's faces cracked ever so slightly, revealing the tumultuous emotions that churned just beneath the surface. She could almost hear the gears of understanding creaking into motion, like a rusty old car trying to start. They might not be ready to rush to the front lines of personal revolution just yet, but the seeds of discourse had been planted, watered with the elixirs of truth and courage. Just as the night was darkening, so too were the confines of their prejudices beginning to unravel. And Clara smiled, realizing that sometimes reckoning with the past was the first step toward a brighter future. The air in the estate crackled with tension as Clara faced her family, a gathering of raised eyebrows and crossed arms. The shadows of the aging mansion loomed over them, its peeling wallpaper whispering secrets of long-forgotten ancestors who once roamed the halls with laughter and ambition. Clara had just unveiled a time-worn portrait, dusting off layers of family history that had been hidden like that last slice of pizza in the back of the fridge. In that moment, she realized that their lineage was not merely a tapestry of flat, dusty anecdotes, but a vibrant saga woven with unexpected richness, a twist worthy of a soap opera cliffhanger. But instead of storming out dramatically, as the reality TV stars might have done, Clara took a deep breath, ready to bridge gaps and mend the frayed bonds of their shared story. As the family sat together, the once stiff atmosphere began to soften, much like butter melting on warm toast. Clara's grandmother, with her rheumy eyes full of unspoken tales, finally broke the silence, her voice trembling like a violin string. I always knew Alara had a bit of magic about her. This declaration hung in the air like an old, undercooked casserole, prompting chuckles, but also the realization that their matriarch had kept this within her for years. They began to swap stories about Alara, the eccentric ancestor who had painted that same portrait, and their laughter filled the air like the sounds of a bustling cafe, blending sweet nostalgia with a hint of reconciliation. Clara found herself engulfed in a whirlwind of emotions, relief mixed with joy, as if she had stumbled upon a hidden treasure beneath a layer of dust and neglect, emboldened by Alara's legacy. Clara's family rallied around the plan to restore the estate, each member pitching in like a scene from a home improvement show. If only they had a charismatic host wielding a hammer in one hand and a coffee in the other, the haunting beauty of the once dilapidated manor began to shine again as they scrubbed, painted, and plastered with the fervor of adventurers embarking on a grand quest. Somewhere between slapping fresh paint on the walls and listening to the indie playlist blasting from Clara's phone, the house transformed into more than just a structure. It became a symbol of their shared roots. Tattered family portraits began to hang in pride of place, and Alara's time-worn face seemed to watch over them, urging them onward like a cheerleader in an old movie musical. Her spirit woven into every beam and every brushed stroke of paint. Clara felt a strange sense of calm wrap around her like a favorite quilt on a chilly night as she delved deeper into her family's history. With each discovery, a locket hidden in an attic trunk, dusty journals brimming with spidery cursive, she unearthed pieces of herself in tales of mischief, love, and resilience. It was akin to binge-watching her family's own reality series, filled with laughable mishaps and heartwarming moments. The overwhelming scent of old wood and lavender polish filled her nostrils as she wandered the halls. And bizarrely, she even started to hear whispers, as if Alara herself was gossiping about the modern world from a different time and space. Clara couldn't help but chuckle at the irony of it all. After years of feeling disconnected, she now felt more entwined in her family's fabric than a knitting disaster on a cold winter's afternoon. On the last evening spent in the manor, Clara stood before Alara's portrait, the flickering candlelight casting dancing shadows, illuminating the depths of the canvas with vibrant hues. The silence enveloped her like a warm embrace, and she let out a deep sigh as the connection to her ancestor rippled through her, a strange sensation akin to logging into a long-lost social media account only to find that the notifications were all about love and legacy, not just memes and cat videos. In that moment, she realized that their flawed, intricate family tree was not an obstacle, but a great tapestry of resilience, each knot a story, each thread a connection. As she touched the canvas, Clara felt as if she were shaking hands, or perhaps reconciling across time with Alara herself. And with every heartbeat, it became clearer. The past and present were not separate entities, but rather dance partners, engaging in a chaotic waltz of love, longing, and renewed understanding. In the charming seaside town of Pennywhistle, where the wind carried the salty scent of the ocean and gulls squawked like over-caffeinated tourists, Emily and Thomas felt like treasure hunters. with their backpacks bulging with notebooks and a penchant for historical trivia. They entered the aged library, a crumbling relic filled with secrets older than time itself. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light, filtering through the grimy windows, casting an ethereal glow upon the sagging shelves. As they browsed the time-worn volumes, the musty smell of ancient pages enveloped them like an overzealous grandmother's hug, thick with nostalgia and a hint of mildew. Little did they know that amidst the forgotten literature lay a love letter, its faded ink a whisper from the 18th century, waiting to spin their world upside down like a historical roller coaster ride from a Marvel blockbuster. When Emily's fingers grazed the delicate parchment tucked between two dusty encyclopedias. Yes, they were the kind of nerds who still believed in encyclopedias. Their hearts raced with excitement. Veins of handwritten words spilled across the page, each stroke saturated with longing and passion, hinting at a romance that could rival any rom-com. But as they shared puzzled glances, the irony struck them like a cannonball to the chest. Here they were, two 21st century history buffs, utterly captivated by a love story long forgotten, buried under layers of time and obscured by musty volumes, like characters in a cheesy Netflix flick. Their quest to uncover the story behind the letter began, driving them deeper into the heart of the town's past, where every cobblestone stair seemed to murmur secrets of its own. What they didn't realize was that this journey wouldn't just teach them about history, but would redefine how they viewed every boring class they ever attended. Days turned into weeks as Emily and Thomas uncovered traces of the letter's origins, digging into archives that smelled like aged paper and disappointment. They pieced together the story of two star-crossed lovers, one a dashing sailor whose laugh could charm the sea, the other a clever, sharp-tongued seamstress with dreams bigger than the ocean. Their words crackled with electricity, sparking a fire of fervor within Emily and Thomas, who began to wonder if perhaps the romance of the past was richer and more diverse than the dry textbooks suggested. The irony of their own friendship was not lost on them. They bantered like the characters from Friends. Yet the more they learned about the couple, the more they discovered layers of love, loss, and the real struggles of life in the 18th century. Nothing short of a dramatic soap opera, punctuated by cannon fire and the scent of fresh sea air. As they dove deeper, the letter wasn't just a piece of paper anymore. It was a portal into an era that reshaped their vision of the world. With every new detail, they uncovered historical scandals, family feuds, and whispered secrets. The couple's story began to intertwine with their own lives. Emily found herself getting butterflies over the prospect of her own undeniable chemistry with Thomas, suddenly realizing that their adventures together held a spark reminiscent of the sailors and seamstresses of yesteryear. In one of those library corners, Thomas remarked with a smirk that historical research had never looked so decidedly non-academic. As they shared pizza and giggled over ancient drama like university students on an epic all-nighter, but their findings were becoming more than mere trivia. They hinted at realities swept under the rug of the widely taught history, a vivid tapestry woven with threads of love, betrayal, and the joys of life that transcended centuries. They laughed at the absurdity of trying to make sense of history from the comfort of bean bags. Their whimsical journey, a delightful contrast to the solemnity of the stories they were uncovering. As their footsteps echoed softly against the worn wooden floor of the library, Emily and Thomas stood at a crossroads, not just of history, but of their own hearts. The love letter had transformed them, inviting them to see their own lives with fresh eyes, perhaps with a touch more romance and a lot less cynicism. They leaned against dusty shelves, buoyed by the currents of the past and the salty breeze from the nearby shore. In the end, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting fiery oranges and purples across the sky, they understood that history wasn't merely a collection of dates and events. It was alive, breathing, and full of stories yearning to be told. And as they imagined sharing their discoveries with the world, the weight of the letter, a relic of forgotten love, transformed into a beacon of hope, reminding them that love, much like history, too often hides in plain sight, waiting to be uncovered. The air was thick with the scent of aged paper and a hint of forgotten romance as Emily and Thomas began their quest to trace the origins of the unassuming letter they had unearthed in the dusty confines of the town library. With its yellowed edges and fading ink, the letter whispered tales of a love that time sought to bury. They sat at a wooden table, the light casting a faint glow on the ink smudges. And as they delved into the words, it felt as if the whispers of Isabella and William were rising up to pinch their ears. Yet, just as they were swept away in the elegance of bygone love, a knock on the window jolted them back into the present, a reminder that not all was well in their quaint little town. Suspense dripped from the walls as they peered outside to see a figure quickly disappearing around the corner, urging them to remember. Some secrets are never meant to be unearthed. With each new clue uncovered, Emily's cascading curls bounced energetically atop her head, mirroring her growing fervor, while Thomas, perpetually the more cautious of the pair, drummed his fingers anxiously against the table. They discovered that Isabella was not just a noblewoman. She was the girl with dreams that rivaled the stars. And William, oh, he was a soldier whose bravery was wrapped in the cloak of obscurity, fighting battles not just on the battlefield, but against the very fabric of societal norms. The deeper they dug, the more they realized they were unearthing a fairy tale filled with grit and sacrifice. A story that could tumble down like a stack of precariously balanced novels. Yet as they traced the faded footprints of history, the sounds of hushed conversations began to echo around them, igniting the sense of being watched by unseen eyes, as if the ghosts of those who opposed such a union were lurking just beyond their reach, literally drawn into the gritty tapestry of Isabella and William's world. Emily and Thomas found themselves navigating through old tavern rumors and cryptic warnings disguised as friendly advice. There was Mary, the town's self-proclaimed historian, who, with her knitting needles clacking away, sat them down on a rickety porch and whispered, "Some stories are best left untold, darling." The irony was palpable. She held a secret herself, like she was sipping tea from a cup adorned with the phrase, "Keep calm and carry on," while revealing just the opposite. But the truth was like honey on a knife's edge, sweet yet dangerous. And as they listened to her veiled threats, the static crackled in the air, a tense reminder that not everyone would celebrate history being dragged into the light. Determination ignited a fire within them, a spark so fierce that it spread like a wildfire across their imaginations. Nothing was stopping Emily and Thomas, not cockroaches in the library's basement, nor Mrs. Abernathy's judgmental stares at the bakery, where the smell of fresh bread wafted in, teasing their every thought. Each day they immersed themselves deeper into the legacy of the lovers, intertwining their own modern-day troubles with the echoes of a love story drenched in valor and anguish. The more they learned, the heavier their hearts grew, as if history was an old friend finally revealing scars that had been hidden far too long. Yet, just as their hearts brimmed with bittersweet triumph and newfound knowledge, a shadow flitted past the window like a bad romantic horror movie. Someone clearly wasn't a fan of their uncovering. Finally, standing before the town's historical society, Emily took a deep breath, channeling her inner Captain Marvel, ready to unveil the hidden narrative with her best "I'm not afraid" posture. Thomas, feeling like he'd sat through one too many bad rom-coms, braced himself for the inevitable chaos. The townsfolk had made it clear they weren't in favor of digging up the past. Armed with frowns sharper than their pitchforks in the olden days, the moment they opened their mouths, the atmosphere shifted, thickening like a fresh batch of cookie dough mixed with tension. As locals cast them wary glances, as if they were the harbingers of doom, as they began to present Isabella and William's tale of love and sacrifice. A profound realization washed over them. Sometimes the truth doesn't just set you free, it sets the whole town on fire, and fireworks or not, they were ignited, ready to unleash a history that had both a heart and a pulse. As Emily and Thomas approached the ancient estate, the enchanting creak of the weathered gates groaned like a rusty hinge, betraying secrets best left undisturbed. The wind whispered sweet nothings through the gnarled branches overhead, casting a dappled shadow over their path. They had come in search of dusty tomes and faded photographs, but what they found, nestled behind time-worn walls, was far more tantalizing. The air was thick with the musty scent of forgotten memories, punctuated by the occasional skitter of a mouse, as if the very spirits of Isabella and William lingered to share their tale. It felt like stepping into a long-lost dream, where time bent around their curious minds like the twisted roots of the ancient oak that watched over the estate's entrance. Inside, the dim light clung to the walls, illuminating remnants of an era soaked in societal strife and class disparity. Emily ran her fingers along the spines of the neglected volumes, feeling the rough texture of old leather amidst the delicate fragrances of dust and decay. Every journal they cracked open unfolded like an old scroll, stories echoing through the ages, revealing the hidden struggles of lovers who dared to defy the constraints binding them. The contrast of Isabella and William's fervent passions against the oppressive backdrop of strict societal norms felt almost Shakespearean. With their love, a twisting romance that dared to challenge the very fabric of their world. Think of it as Romeo and Juliet, but with fewer poison cups and more tea time. Yet, as Emily's eyes swept over the yellowed pages, a chill ran down her spine. It seemed that some secrets were better left buried. Their journey took a darker turn the deeper they delved into the estate's hidden corners, where shadows thrived like rats in the underbelly of history itself. As they pieced together this tragic narrative of love fettered by class, a sinister truth unveiled itself. There were eyes watching from the crumbling rafters, guardians of the tangled past who valued silence over truth. The oppressive heaviness of the house seemed to shift and swell around them, and the sight of broken furniture dressed in cobweb veils felt like the ghost of a long-lost dinner party frozen in time. It was dramatic. It was absurd. But the stakes were rising faster than a poorly made souffle, and the whispering winds carried more than just tales of old. They carried the threat of those who'd go to great lengths to keep their power intact. As they stumbled upon a forgotten love letter tucked between the pages of a journal, the air crackled with revelations like the charge before a storm. The elegant script sang of a bond that challenged the norms of their day, a testament to love that refused to bow to status or reputation. In that moment, everything clicked. Emily and Thomas understood that they were not mere detectives of the past, but unwitting players on a stage where the echoes of their predecessors would promise freedom or doom. Laughter bubbled up from Emily, tinged with disbelief, but beneath it rested a gravity that weighed down her heart like an anchor. With newfound determination, they grabbed the letter, for it was clear this was the key to unlocking not just Isabella and William's love, but possibly their own understanding of rights and dignity in a world too often governed by the fears of the powerful. But their excitement turned as swift as a plot twist in a cheap rom-com when they heard heavy footsteps echoing down the corridor. Panic surged in their chests as the lingering scent of danger thickened the air, a stark reminder that their quest for knowledge could cost them dearly. The laughter of their historical muses faded, replaced by the grim urgency of securing their findings and escaping before becoming yet another lost chapter in this estate's haunted history. They raced through the shadowy halls like a couple of Scooby-Doo characters, dodging obstacles and conspiracies that threatened not just their investigative spirit, but their very lives. With each heartbeat, they felt the weight of history pressing upon them, an exhilarating and terrifying race against time that could either rewrite the past or seal it away forever. The air crackled not just with impending thunder, but with the electric tension of a community on the brink. Outside, dark clouds roiled overhead like a villain's plot in a Shakespearean play, while inside the town hall, Isabella and William shuffled nervously, glancing at their presentation materials like anxious chefs, eyeing a volatile souffle. They hadn't expected an anonymous threat. A sinister little note slipped under their office door like a bad horror movie cliché that urged them to ditch their research. But fueled by the whirlwind romance of Isabella and William's saga, they brushed off fear as if chasing away pesky mosquitoes on a sultry summer night. The storm outside might have been brewing, but the real tempest surged within their hearts as they vowed to press on, determined to reveal the truth cloaked in dusty town archives and fragile, yellowed parchment. As the storm unleashed its fury, the audience trickled in like wary soldiers, unsure if they were facing an enlightening lecture or a cataclysmic event. The scent of damp wood and antique paper hung in the air, tickling their noses and invoking old memories, while Isabella's spirited enthusiasm shimmered like a beacon amid the gathering gloom. With each word, she recounted the tragic love story of her ancestors, their whispered affections quickly turning into a saga that echoed roll like a roller coaster down the tracks of history. William stood beside her, his hands gesturing animatedly, as if trying to pull the audience through time itself, revealing not just romance, but the very essence of their town's forgotten struggles. It was as if Star Wars and Romeo and Juliet had feasted together at a potluck, and the locals were the reluctant guests caught in an epic saga they hadn't signed up for. With bated breath, Isabella revealed the forgotten love letter, its ink smudged and fragile as a butterfly's wing, treasuring it as one might reveal a family heirloom amidst tumultuous times. The crowd, once loud with skepticism, fell silent, entranced by the burnt edges and crumbling paper in her trembling hands. They viewed the letter not just as a piece of romantic correspondence, but a vessel containing the raw, untoned emotions of two spirited souls fighting against a tide of societal norms and familial opposition. The heartfelt words spilled forth yearning, anger, and hope as they bore witness to a love that flourished amid adversity, igniting empathy where there had once been dismissal. Suddenly, history was no longer a relic of the past. It vibrated with every heartbeat in the room, reminding them all of their shared humanity. But just as they began to light the spark of understanding, an uncomfortable truth dripped into the narrative like rain on an old rooftop, pooling in the minds of the audience, who in this quaint town had turned a blind eye to the love and pain that blossomed in the shadows. The letter shed light not just on the couple's clandestine affair, but also on the community's collective hypocrisy, unveiling the unspoken judgments that had tainted their legacy like the rust on ancient iron. Gasps flitted around the room, as though someone had just revealed the killer in a game of Clue. The white glove flew off, revealing the grit and grime of history. It became abundantly clear they couldn't simply sweep the cobwebs of the past under the heavy carpets of the present and expect them to disappear without a trace. As the storm raged on outside, lashing the building with rain like a scene straight out of a superhero flick, the audience wrestled with their revelations. What started as an ordinary exhibit had morphed into a powerful mirror, reflecting their town's secrets back at them, forcing each person to confront uncomfortable truths about love, loss, and legacy. Some heads shook in disbelief, while others nodded, emboldened by a newfound awareness that perhaps they had hidden behind their own walls for too long. With the echoes of Isabella and William's saga resonating in their hearts, they realized that history wasn't just about dates and dusty tomes. It was a living, breathing entity that demanded acknowledgement. And as the thunder clapped its applause in the background, they discovered that in the midst of turbulent storms, a forgotten love letter could indeed change everything. The day after their big presentation was like a scene from a small-town soap opera, a heady mix of acceptance, skepticism, and whispers carried by the wind. Folks gathered at the diner, gripping greasy plates of fries while debating the implications of the long-buried love letter. The aroma of sizzling bacon wafted through the air, but it seemed to take a backseat to the intoxicating taste of scandal. "Did you hear what those kids dug up?" one woman clucked, her eyebrows arching so high they nearly floated away. Meanwhile, Emily and Thomas exchanged glances, a silent pact binding them, a bond forged not only through their research, but through the shared exhilaration of challenging the status quo with ink and parchment from the past. In the town square, the sunlight glinted off dusty storefronts, illuminating the smudges of history that clung to the cobblestones like stubborn gum. People ambled about, some clutching their morning coffee like a lifeline, while others leaned against lamp posts, discussing the forgotten couple from centuries ago like they were the newest reality TV stars. Did you ever think a love letter could hold the power to shake things up? Thomas mused aloud, a grin spreading across his face as he remembered the initial gasps from the audience. With every twist and turn of their newfound dialogue, it was becoming clearer. This wasn't just about romance. It was about class, identity, and rewriting narratives that had tightly stitched the town's fabric together for generations. Perhaps love, particularly the kind that dared cross boundaries, was a stronger force than they had ever anticipated. As days rolled into weeks, one could almost hear the echoes of conversations bubbling to the surface, conversations that had long been drowned out by the mundane rhythm of routine. The town buzzed with energy, punctuated by laughter and the occasional squabble over whose ancestors had truly paved the way for such societal shifts. In homes once filled with silence, kitchen tables became battlegrounds of opinion, where Grandma's old Civil War stories met the young'uns who dared to provoke with their modern ideas. The air crackled with excitement, and for once, the dust of history didn't feel like a crumbling relic, but rather a living, breathing entity inspired by the forgotten lovers who had reminded them all that passion knows no economic boundaries. Emily savored the irony. Who knew that a simple love letter could do more for community spirit than a dozen bake sales? Yet not all were on board with the stirring of emotions that this ancient correspondence had unleashed. A faction of traditionalists clung to their arguments like a dog on a warm bone, insisting that the past should remain undisturbed. These self-appointed guardians of history positioned themselves like sentinels, wary of the change brought about by Emily and Thomas's discovery. They presented their viewpoints in stern tones, with furrowed brows and the unmistakable scent of old books, and dust layered deep in their voices, insisting that the real history was being threatened. Irony dripped from every corner of these conversations. It was a curious paradox that so many were tied to a fading narrative, while the town yearned for connection and evolution. In the midst of the chaos, Emily and Thomas found solace in the laughter of children playing in the park, reminding them that history wasn't just about facts and dates. It was also the stories that lived on through generations. They watched as families gathered to discuss the newfound discoveries, mouths filled with excitement rather than division. It warmed their hearts like a flickering bonfire on a chilly fall evening, seeing love, both old and new, stitch the community back together. They were forging a new understanding, not just of history, but of each other, breaking down the walls filled with misunderstanding. The world outside felt alive, vibrant, and full of potential, crackling like static electricity on a stormy day. And they knew this was just the beginning of a profound journey toward unity. In the sleepy coastal village of Eldermere, where the salty breeze often carried the scent of fish and adventure, young Alexander stumbled upon a hidden gem in his late grandfather's attic. Dust motes danced like tiny fairies in the shafts of sunlight, illuminating the musty corners of the old room. His hand brushed against an ancient tome, its leather cover cracked and whispering tales of forgotten times. As he pried it open, a fragile piece of parchment slipped out, revealing itself to be a map, graced with symbols, and a compass rose that seemed to pulse with promise. Well, isn't this just like the Goonies, but with a lot more dust and fewer pirate hats? He mused, excitement bubbling like a freshly popped soda can in his chest. The map sparked a flame of curiosity in Alexander's adventurous heart, and he could almost hear the distant sound of treasure chests creaking open. Each line and symbol on the parchment told a story of its own, drawing him into a sea of legends that had pooled around Eldermere like old coins in a wishing well. But this was no one-man quest. He needed help. That's when he met Clara, a spirited historian whose imagination could rival Indiana Jones, and who, curiously, preferred dusty library stacks over dashing through jungles. She arrived, backpack in tow and her hair a wild halo of enthusiasm, her eyes alight with the thrill of the unknown, ready to tackle any historical conundrum that came their way. Their partnership was a delightful explosion of ideas, like fireworks bursting in the night sky, bright, chaotic, and occasionally messy. Clara, with her encyclopedic knowledge of local lore, filled in the blanks around the map, connecting dots that made Alexander's heart race faster than a caffeine-fueled squirrel. "Did you know?" she quipped one afternoon, leaning over a pot of tea that smelled decidedly too strong. "There are legends of a pirate named Wily O'Crossbones who hid his loot under the red rocks on the beach." Her voice dipped into dramatic tones, making Alexander chuckle at the ridiculousness. Yet he marveled at how every story she told became a thread, weaving their fates closer together. As days turned into exhilarating weeks, the two of them roamed the rocky outcrops and windswept shores like modern-day adventurers, armed with nothing but their wits and a map full of baffling symbols. The sea roared its ancient songs, and each crashing wave felt like a cheer from nature herself, urging them on in their quest. More than once, they found themselves shoulder-deep in mud while scouring for clues, laughter echoing through the air like a joyous melody amidst the very real grime. They scavenged fossils and broken shells, each one a reminder of time gone by, not unlike the faded ink on the map that led them further into a treasure buried beneath layers of history, and perhaps under layers of their own hearts as well. By the time they pieced together the puzzle, a bond had blossomed, bright and undeniable, between them amid all the dust and adventure. At the edge of the village, overlooking the endless crashing waves, Alexander felt as if uncovering that treasure was secondary to discovering what truly mattered: each other. "Call me a hopeless romantic," he laughed, nudging Clara playfully as they sat on a weathered log. "But I think I might find the real prize right here with you." Clara rolled her eyes, but her smile betrayed the warmth blooming in her chest, akin to the setting sun kissing the horizon. Together, they faced a new dawn, both of treasure and a love's intriguing, uncertain beginning, ready to write their own story upon the canvas of ancient sands. The sun hung low in the sky as Alexander and Clara stood before the tattered treasure map, its ancient symbols swirling like a cryptic dance of fate. "So, what does this mean?" Clara squinted at a particularly perplexing emblem, resembling a sun trapped in a spider's web. Alexander chuckled, jotting down a note on the roll of aged parchment, and replied, "Maybe it means our first stop is to untangle ourselves from this conundrum." With every squiggle and swirl they deciphered, the promise of adventure lured them towards the rugged coastline, where legends spoke of treasures hidden beneath the earth's embrace, swathed in salt and mystery, like an old sea captain's secret recipe for calamari. The map seemed to pulse with an energy of its own, igniting a fire in their hearts that would soon test the very bonds that brought them together. Their feet crunched against the sand as they made their way along the rocky shores, the ocean roaring like an angry mother scolding her mischievous children. Each wave that crashed against the jagged rocks sprayed them with salty mist, a reminder of nature's unpredictable temperament. Clara's laughter mingled with the sound of the surf as she slipped on a loose pebble, catching Alexander's arm for balance. Whoa there. I'd hate for you to meet the deep blue before we find that gold, he joked, his heart pounding with excitement and something else, something deeper that felt almost like the thrill of discovery itself. Still, most days held the humor of uncertainty, and neither spoke of the nagging fear of what lay ahead, the storm that loomed, as dark and promising as an old pirate's legend. As dusk settled like a velvet curtain, dark clouds rolled in, and the wind began to howl, sending shivers down their spines. The fierce storm gathered its strength, crashing down upon them as they sought refuge in the entrance of a hidden cave, its mouth gaping like a giant yawning cat, hungry for the secrets of adventurers. The roaring wind outside mingled with the drumming rain, creating a symphony of chaos that threatened to drown out their thoughts. Clara pulled her cloak tight around her shoulders, her fingers brushing against the damp fabric, which smelled of earth and adventure. This doesn't look like a 5-star resort, she shouted over the storm, her voice in high spirits despite the tempest. And Alexander grinned, feeling a strange comfort in her defiance, as thunder clapped like applause, echoing through the dark chamber. Within the safety of the cave, as the storm raged outside like an overzealous fan at a rock concert, they lit a small fire, its flickering flames casting shadows that danced like ghosts of lost sailors. So, what's the plan? Wait for the sun to come back from its vacation, Clara teased, her eyes sparkling with the firelight. Alexander leaned closer, feeling the warmth envelop them both, and added, only if the sun promises to come back with a treasure map and a side of fries. Their laughter filled the cave, weaving through the rocky crevices as their shared fears and joys intertwined, transforming the camaraderie of their shared quest into an unshakable bond that felt as solid as the stone beneath their feet. It was in that rugged sanctuary, amidst the crashing waves and the whispers of long-lost sailors, that they began to confront not just the mystery of the map, but the deeper treasure buried within their hearts, the potential for more than just friendship. But even as their closeness grew, shadows loomed just beyond the flickering light. Rumors dripped like rainwater from a leaking roof, whispers of another treasure seeker, an infamous pirate whose reputation for ruthlessness made even the bravest sailors tremble. Each eye-roll-worthy tale of his escapades served as a chilling reminder that they were not alone in their pursuit. They were treading on a path shadowed by danger and greed. I knew I'd signed up for an adventure, not a full-on horror movie, Clara quipped, a devil-may-care grin spreading across her face as her bravado masked apprehension. So, amidst the chaos, storm, and looming threat, they prepared to emerge from the cave, knowing well that not only was the treasure they sought at stake, but the very beginning of their love story, one bold step into the tempest of the unknown. The skies over the Caribbean burned with hues of orange and pink, as whispers of a legendary treasure wafted through the taverns and marketplaces. News of gold coins and sparkling gems reached the ears of Captain Rayol, a pirate with a notorious reputation that could make the bravest sailor tremble. With his eyes glinting like the treasure he so desperately sought, he gathered his motley crew of cutthroats, their dark laughter echoing like thunder on a stormy night. While spoiling for a fight, Rayol's heart raced not just at the thought of riches, but at the thrill of the hunt, like a cat prowling after unsuspecting mice. Little did he know, the real catch of the day was none other than the determined duo of Alexander and Clara, whose fates were about to intertwine spectacularly with his own. Meanwhile, deep in the jungle, the sweet scent of moist earth mingled with the sharp tang of citrus as Alexander and Clara navigated the overgrown path toward the final clue of the elusive treasure. The air was thick with anticipation, each rustle of leaves feeling like the heartbeat of the jungle, and their hands brushed against the map as they strategized their next move. Just as they finally believed the treasure was within reach, a sudden shout pierced the air, menacing voices filled with malice. The sun seemed to dim as Captain Rayol and his crew emerged from the underbrush, wicked grins plastered across their weathered faces, sharp swords glinting in the fading light, like a villainous gang straight out of a pirate flick. Looks like treasure hunting just got a bit more lively, Clara quipped, her heart pounding like a percussion solo in a high-stakes movie scene. The air crackled with tension as swords clashed with might, the battle igniting like an explosive action sequence. Alexander swept his blade in a wide arc, adrenaline surging as he matched Rayol's ferocity stroke for stroke. Clara, not one to be sidelined, fought valiantly beside him, her fierce spirit shining as she deflected a blow that came far too close for comfort. I may not have trained in a pirate dojo, but I could write Sword Fighting 101 on my resume, she shouted, laughing amidst the chaos. Their laughter echoed unceremoniously against the cacophony of battle, a strange contrast to the violent spectacle unfolding around them. As the melee intensified, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows that danced like phantoms among the trees. Each parry and thrust brought them closer, their connection blossoming despite the peril surrounding them. Clara found herself backing into Alexander, the heat of the battle morphing into the heat of something far more significant lingering in their eyes. With her heart racing, she took a step closer, dodging a stinging swipe from a pirate's blade. "You know, I think I might love you, you brave blockhead," she blurted out, her voice a mixture of exhilaration and panic, the words spilling forth like treasure from a long clenched chest, unexpected and thrilling. Caught off guard, Alexander's eyes widened. But the moment was fleeting. Pirate chaos was still rampant around them, swords still clashing like cymbals in a rock concert. But in that cacophony, amidst their foes and the fray, something profound stirred between them, a connection stronger than the lure of gold. With a newfound fervor, he countered a pirate's advance and shot Clara a mischievous grin, his heart soaring like a ship catching the perfect wind. "Well, if we survive this, I think we can skip right to the part where we talk about our future together," he shouted, deflecting another blow. In that treacherous moment, amidst cutthroats and swashbucklers, they found more than just a treasure map. The compass of their hearts was finally aligning. The night air crackled with electricity as Alexander and Clara sprinted through the dense underbrush, their hearts pounding in sync with the distant shouts of the pirate crew giving chase. Moonlight filtered through the tree canopy, casting silvery patches on the forest floor, guiding their frantic steps. Every rustle in the foliage sent chills down their spines, as if the very trees were cheering them on, or perhaps whispering secrets about the treasure they sought. With each breath, the smell of damp earth and wild musk filled their lungs, pushing them further toward their destiny. It was less a pursuit of gold and jewels, and more a race against fate itself, as though the universe was holding its breath, waiting for their next move. Finally, they burst into an enchanted glade, where the moon hung low and bright, bathing everything in a ghostly glow. At the center stood an ancient stone pedestal draped in shimmering vines, as if Mother Nature herself was decorating it for a grand ball. With bated breath, they approached the pedestal, and there, nestled in its crevices, lay not only the treasure of lore, gold coins, gleaming gems, but also a mysterious family heirloom that had surely seen centuries of history unfold. Look at that. It's like the last piece of an epic puzzle, only instead of a picture of a cat, it's real treasure, Clara quipped, her eyes sparkling with mirth. The atmosphere shifted. Wealth wasn't merely a material goal. It was a shared legacy that bound them together even more tightly now. As the initial shock faded, Clara picked up the heirloom, running her fingers over the intricate engravings that told stories of valor and adventures. Past her mind, spinning like a 90s action flick. It was a golden locket, and as she opened it, a tiny portrait of an ancestor smiled back at them. One could almost hear the echoes of their laughter, as if the past was infusing their present with warmth. So, is this a family reunion? Or are we actually doing something romantic here? Alexander teased, his voice a mix of awe and playful sarcasm. The tension of their thrilling escape melted like ice on a summer day, replaced by an intimacy charged with the thrill of discovery and the glimmer of possibility. They found themselves caught in a moment, so rich it could rival the jewels surrounding them. Two souls equally lost in the tangible feel of triumph and reawakening. Clara's laughter chimed like wind chimes in a light breeze, making Alexander's heart flutter with a warmth far more valuable than gold. They exchanged glances so filled with unspoken words. It was as if the universe conspired to illuminate their path toward love. With the glade cloaked in serenity and splendor, Alexander stepped closer, drawing Clara into an embrace that felt like coming home after a long journey at sea. The rich scent of earth after rain mixed with the sweet perfume of wildflowers, each inhalation reminding them that their true adventure had just begun. In that magical glade, under the mesmerizing gaze of the moon, they realized what had unfolded was far beyond mere riches. It was a foundation that would anchor their hearts, as wild as pirates and treasure maps are. I'd trade it all for this simple moment with you, Alexander admitted, his voice soft but firm, as the golden locket shimmered in Clara's hand like a shared secret. They both chuckled, yet there was an undeniable weight behind their words. The treasure of their adventures had led to something far more precious, a connection forged through danger and discovery, laughter and longing, and as the moon bathed them in its glow, they knew, not counting doubloons or diamonds, they were richer than they had ever dreamed possible. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the village, Alexander and Clara set foot on familiar ground, their hearts hammering like the blacksmith's hammer on a forge. Cheers erupted from every corner, swelling like the warm summer breeze that whipped through the streets. Children darted around them, giggling and squealing, while their parents beamed with pride, their faces glowing like lanterns in the twilight. The treasure they had unearthed gleamed in their minds, just as brightly as the coins hidden in their satchel. Yet it was clear that the real reward was not the gold, but the camaraderie of the village they cherished so deeply. It felt as if they had returned not just as adventurers, but as rock stars, ready to take the stage after an epic tour of far-off lands. A journey full of peril and Hannah Montana-worthy chaos. With the treasure secured, their new plan took shape like a mural splashed on the side of a barn, bold, colorful, and just a bit chaotic. They gathered the villagers around the well, the heart of their community, where stories were traded as currency, and laughter danced in the air like fireflies at dusk. "We share it," Clara proclaimed, her voice ringing like a bell. "Every coin should find a home, every dream a chance to flourish." And with that, a new chapter was inked in both the village's history and in their hearts, feeding the hungry mouths of families, fixing the crumbling church roof, and even blessing the town square with a fountain that spat water like a dragon, a constant reminder of the adventure that had led them there. Days turned into weeks, each passing day painted with brushstrokes of passion and purpose, as Alexander and Clara forged ahead like fierce explorers, charting uncharted territories. They worked tirelessly alongside the villagers, brow furrowed, yet laughter bubbling just beneath the surface, mixing the gravity of responsibility with the sweet nectar of companionship. Their love blossomed in the shared sweat and joyous shouts, seeing each other through the dust and dirt that coated their hands like badges of honor. There were moments of ignorance, like when Clara mistakenly added salt instead of sugar to the village's new bakery recipe, and nearly sent everyone into a culinary crisis, transforming their attempts at community building into episodes of a slapstick comedy rather than noble endeavors. As weeks flowed into months, the warm glow of camaraderie only deepened the bond between Alexander and Clara. They found joy not just in the results of their labors, but in every banter-filled adventure along the way, whether they were wading through knee-high weeds to plant new gardens or helping patch up roofs under the unforgiving sun. Each challenge sharpened their partnership like a blacksmith sharpening a blade. At night, beneath a blanket of stars, they shared dreams that soared higher than any treasure map could reveal, plots that rivaled those of any soap opera, deciding that maybe a library wouldn't be such a bad idea after all, especially one filled with tales of heroism and romance. And through it all, they knew that, together, they could weather any storm, or at least laugh through the predictable ones that life would throw at them. With every sunset serenading their efforts, Alexander and Clara stood hand in hand, their hearts twined together like vines on an ancient tree. The village around them was no longer just home. It had become the stage for their next grand adventure, where mundane turned into magical at the flip of a coin. They were not merely partners in love, but partners in life, ready to tackle fresh challenges with all the enthusiasm of kids in a candy store. It dawned on them that their real treasure was not a chest of golden doubloons, but a treasure trove of memories waiting to be made, rekindling the thrill of discovery. And as they embraced the uncertainty of tomorrow, their laughter rang out like a clarion call, echoing the ideal that every hero beginnings with a single gesture. And in their case, that gesture was just the beginning of something gloriously unknown.